Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of our journey through William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Last time, we learned that Malcolm was to become heir to the throne of King Duncan, casting doubt over the prophecies that the witches had given to Macbeth. This doubt drove our brave eponymous hero to the absolutely logical decision that he would have to commit regicide in order to attain the throne. We also learnt that Duncan would soon be travelling to Macbeth's castle in order to form closer alliances with his loyal general. Today, as we look at Act 1, Scene 5, we will meet with Macbeth's loving wife, and we will hear what she has to say about the prophecies that have been given to her husband. Quick note on annotation, same as usual. I will be annotating general plot points in green, contextual factors in blue, and writer's craft in red. Lady Macbeth enters reading a letter from Macbeth, and this is essentially just a little plot recap like at the start of a TV show. He's met some witches. They told him he would be Thane of Cawdor and then king. He's now Thane of Cawdor. He wanted to make her aware, though, as she is his partner of greatness. And that's really interesting, as men were firmly above women in Jacobean society. They were not equal partners. Then she responds, and unlike Macbeth, she immediately believes the witch's prophecies. Some people believe that Lady Macbeth is linked to the witches and that is why she believes them here. I think there's some evidence that you could use to link her influence over Macbeth to the evil that the witches have, but I'm not going to go all the way in and call her the fourth witch here. She doesn't have any doubts over what the witches have said, but what she does have doubts over is her husband. And the audience would be appalled to hear this, as men were resolutely above women in the patriarchal Jacobean society. She fears her husband's nature. It seems that Lady Macbeth believes that violent, brutal Macbeth is too kind for the task at hand. And she also seems resigned to the idea of regicide here. She knows that that's what they're going to have to do. She's going to have to lead him to it, like there's no other way out for her. Milk of human kindness is a phrase that is now part of the daily English language, but Shakespeare actually invents it right here. It's metaphorical, and the mention of milk could be a link to the idea of purity and femininity. Women produce milk to feed their young children, and this link emasculates Macbeth in the eyes of the audience, something that we will see a lot more of shortly. The idea of Macbeth being too pure to commit regicide, despite the fact that he's just unseamed an enemy in battle, it emphasises how evil and vicious a crime regicide was seen to be. What she doesn't doubt, though, is his ambition. They've probably discussed the idea of kingship before. They're both violently ambitious people, so it stands to reason that they would discuss what they want, what their ambitions are. But she doubts that Macbeth would actually kill for the crown. Illness here has connotations that are solely negative. An illness is a bacteria or a virus that attacks your body from the inside. It is dark and it is poisonous. Macbeth, she believes, doesn't have this side to his character. And Lady Macbeth addressing this would suggest that she does have this side to her. Again, the Jacobean audience would be in disbelief at her here. This is her introduction, remember? So there's no build up to this. She's immediately manipulative, venomous, and seemingly very powerful. She's an absolute shattering of the societal expectation of womanhood. Macbeth wants the honour. He wants all of the honour that comes with the title of king, all of the power, all of the worship and loyalty from his subjects. But he would want to achieve it nobly, holily perhaps. However, Lady Macbeth won't have that. The sibilant S sounds here make her sound almost serpent-like, as the serpent who tempted Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. She will tempt and drive Macbeth to commit regicide and to grab the crown. All repercussions be damned. There really is a lot on the Jacobean gender roles in this bit. Lady Macbeth almost seems to have reversed them in her mind. It is as if Macbeth is the feminine flower who will need protection and will need guidance from the more brutal and intelligent partner, Lady Macbeth. And then more on that. He will have to follow her instructions. And there's another direct link to evil and the supernatural. Her spirits will influence and poison Macbeth. Lady Macbeth herself will repeat the word spirits in another context later in this scene, really cementing the link between her and the supernatural power that lingers throughout the play. Shakespeare then, with some repetition, the word valour. Macbeth, remember, on the battlefield was Valour's minion, but it is now Lady Macbeth and her tongue, her words, that will be their bravest weapon going forward. It is her influence that will embolden Macbeth and encourage him to seize the crown. She then says that it seems fated that Macbeth is to become king. I would question that, though. If it's true, why does she need to intervene and encourage the regicide? Her meddling with the idea of fate is another link between her and the witches, because that is exactly what they do, remember. Weird sisters have the power to influence destiny and fate. Luckily for them, a real positive twist of fate. She is informed that Duncan will be coming to their castle that night. How lucky. She vocalises her delight. And there's a hint of dramatic irony here, as the messenger would assume this delight is at the honour of a visit from the king. But the audience know it is good news, as it presents a golden opportunity for the couple and their plans. Then some really nice juxtaposition from Shakespeare. Fatal is linked directly to an ending, to death, whereas entrance is linked to an arrival, a beginning. This is the beginning of the end for Duncan. The raven is a bird linked to the idea of death, foreshadowing the death that is to come, and perhaps the fact that the raven is horse suggests a great deal of death is coming. In Jacobean times, any land would have been the man's property, so her claiming the battlements here puts her in the masculine role again. She owns the castle because she's the stronger partner. Then this line, in my opinion, is her key one. She calls on the supernatural to help her. She knows that what she is planning is evil, and she knows who, or rather what, can help her. If we look at the play as a warning against the power of the supernatural, everything that happens to Lady Macbeth traces back to this line. Then her hubris. She, in a similar vein to her husband, believes that they are powerful enough not to be corrupted by the power of the supernatural. She commands the spirits to unsex her. She doesn't want to be constrained by her feminine characteristics. She doesn't want to be her natural self. Then we get a mention of the crown. She means her head, but it's an obvious link to her ambition all the same. She believes that she needs to be crueler to take the necessary path, more warrior-like. And the link to thick blood is because it would heal quicker. The feelings, guilt, for example, would fade quicker. She understands that the act is horrible, but she wants to do it. For that to happen, she must have the feelings, which she sees and says are a weakness, removed. Nature would shake her, it would stop her. Nature is good. Therefore, its opposite, the supernatural, is bad. Then the alliterative M sounds make her voice sound vicious and dangerous. It's almost as if she's snarling. She's not the untrustworthy serpent at this point. She is the hungry, vicious wolf. She wants the evil spirits to remove her purity and her ability to love, to care, represented here by her breast milk. She wants to replace that with bitter boil. The spirits are invisible, yet another power that they have. Then we've got that repetitive dun sound again. Irony here as well, considering what happens to Lady Macbeth later. Here she calls on darkness. Later, she will be desperate for light. And regicide is that evil that she wants to hide the crime from everyone and everything, even the knife. There's also a link to the great chain of being, as she fears that heaven will see what they are doing and that heaven will intervene to stop it. As Macbeth arrives, her tone changes dramatically. She's celebrating her husband here, a complete contrast to how the audience have just heard her privately criticising him. It also sounds as if she's repeating the witch's prophecies. The words used are very, very similar. There are several subtle links between Lady Macbeth and the supernatural, and this is just another one of them. It also mirrors Macbeth's echoing of fair and foul in his first line, potentially showing that these characters are susceptible to supernatural interference. She, like Macbeth, is blinded by ambition. She's got no consideration for any obstacles or any things that could possibly go wrong. Then Macbeth informs Lady Macbeth that Duncan is coming to their castle. We already know this as an audience, but Shakespeare uses dramatic irony here to build tension around that arrival. It's a really, really dramatic point that we're building to. We know what Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are planning to do. We know that the murder of Duncan would act as a turning point for everything that will follow in the play. So Shakespeare is really building up to that point. Shakespeare layers on the dramatic irony in this section. The audience know that she is planning to commit regicide, so goes hence could well be Duncan leaving his life behind rather than leaving their castle behind. Then, when she reveals her plan to Macbeth, he's visibly shocked, potentially because he is surprised, maybe that they're having the same thoughts, but potentially because he's surprised at her in general. As we've seen, she's completely the opposite of Jacobean societal expectations of gender. Macbeth's shock here would have been mirrored very much by the audience. Then one of the play's most famous lines, an explicit link to appearance versus reality and to Lady Macbeth's control over Macbeth. She tells him to play the perfect host whilst they plot the murder. There's juxtaposition in the imagery as well of purity from the flowers but venomous deceit through the snake. And also it's a link to the gunpowder plot. The medals that those who foiled the plot had the image of a snake and flowers on. Finally, her use of animal imagery links her to the witches again as well, through her language choices and the ability to control and manipulate Macbeth. She then vocalises the fact that Macbeth needs to do what she says. The audience would have been shocked again here. She calls the murder a business, as does Macbeth. They have to try to take the emotion out of the situation in order for them to be able to do it. Believes that once Duncan is dead, they will have all of the power for the rest of their lives. Irony for the play's later events. Shakespeare uses sibilants here just to illustrate the evil scheming and plotting that Lady Macbeth has been doing. This scene mirrors Act 1, Scene 3 and the confusing power dynamic between Macbeth and the witches. As he was with them, he's not fully convinced by what he's been told here. He needs to speak about it further, just as he needed more information from the witches. However, like the witches, Lady Macbeth seems to refuse this from him. This scene ends with her encouraging Macbeth to be brave and to act naturally. The plot is going forward, even though Macbeth said they will need to speak about it further. There's more subversion of the expected gender roles within the relationship from that bit there. So there we go. Lady Macbeth has set her plot into action. Duncan is about to arrive at the castle. She's informed Macbeth that he needs to pretend to be the perfect host. That is what will lure Duncan in. That is what will make the regicide easy for them to commit. If you've got any extra notes that you think would be useful at this point, then please add them to your scripts and feel free to add them in the comment section below. I'd love to see what you make of the developments that we've seen throughout this scene. And same as usual, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. You can find us over on Instagram at OpenBookPC. I will see you next time as Duncan arrives at Macbeth's castle to meet with his fate in Act 1, Scene 6.